Welcome back. The battle is heating up for which of the Kevins may become the next Fed chair. The Wall Street Journal reporting that former Fed Governor Kevin Warsh and current Trump economic advisor Kevin Hassett have been duking it out in what they say is a very apprentice-esque competition to take over for Powell next year. And while one Kevin is regarded as a serious contender, the other is facing some criticism. For more, we're joined by Brian Schwartz, White House economic policy reporter. It pains me to say this, at the Wall Street Journal. Brian. No, seriously, it's great to see you again. Welcome back. Welcome on.
Yeah, it's great to be back, Kelly. Thanks for having me.
And it's a great story. I love seeing your bylines all the time. So is it really down to Kevin versus Kevin?
Well, I mean, as of today, they are definitely in the top tier. I mean, you're looking at somebody like Kevin Hassett, though, who's been surging to the top of the list over the last few weeks. Now, keep in mind, me and my colleague at the Wall Street Journal have been working on this for a couple of weeks. And, the consistent theme that we heard from sources is that Hassett, the National Economic Council Director for the president, is just, surging in preference over Kevin Warsh, which I thought was pretty interesting. And why is that? Because for months, it seemed like that Warsh was the person in the driver's seat, and now looks like Kevin Hassett may be the person to beat for this job whenever Powell leaves.
I never understood the Warsh chatter because he's been so hawkish for so many years, which is fine. I mean, he as you detail, I mean, he has sounded a bit more dovish lately, talking a little bit about what the Fed could do to lower rates in conjunction with kind of the Treasury and the balance sheet. But I don't know. I'm not getting a huge signal from him that he's willing to jump on board with, immediate rate cuts and that kind of thing.
Well, that's right. And we've done reporting on this before about him in that sense in particular, where he's been pretty clear that he's not going to be as loyal to the president, at least from his remarks that we've seen, as maybe the president wants. And I think that's very, very critical here in terms of what the president is looking for his next Fed chair. I understand the independence of the Fed very well, but the president really kind of shrugs that off, it seems like, from his public remarks, and is looking more at someone, as he has said, to just cut rates. And I'm not entirely sure, to your point, that Kevin Warsh is going to be that person just to raise his hand all the time and to say to the president or somebody close to the president, okay, we as a Fed are going to move to cut rates. It's, of course, very complicated to do that. And maybe Kevin Hassett will. And the other thing that Kevin Hassett has that Warsh does not is proximity to the president. That, for Trump, is really, really key. He gets to see Hassett all the time. Warsh is usually based in New York. I think he's got a place in Florida. But either way, Trump is now pretty much always in Washington and often just on the weekends going to Bedminster, New Jersey. So that's kind of geographically how Hassett seems to have a preference here.
And Hassett, while we think of him now as more of a policy guy, is a PhD economist, worked at the Fed in the 90s, as I understand it. I'm curious more about kind of how the market would take all of this, if it views Hassett as too close to the president, or at least in some ways the market and Hassett would be aligned with a couple of rate cuts. But if they started to think he's just going to run dovish policy to please the president that could harm the economy in the long run, you're going to end up with long rates backing up, mortgage rates backing up, inflation, all the bad stuff, right? So right now, I think it's a little hard to tell from the market signals, but that would seem to be the place to watch.
I think so. And I also think it's something to watch out for if the president truly does somehow move to fire Powell early. Of course, that would be kind of thunderstruck to the markets. But I also think, to be fair, investors would look at Hassett maybe not as favorably as Warsh because of that question, to your point, on loyalty and maybe too much loyalty to the president and all that jazz. But, I think also investors would know that at the time of if this all plays out, if Powell moves on peacefully later in the year, 2026, whatever, and Hassett's picked, I think there are going to be guardrails around him just being able to cut rates. I mean, there's a board. They got to go through all the machinations to get to the point of cutting rates, as we know. So I think based on how the makeup of the board goes, it's really the question as to how the market will react to that news.
They have to get confirmed, right? By how many people? It's a committee in the Senate that would have to confirm them. So they would presumably need both GOP and Democratic support, or just Republican support?
The way it's laid out now, it probably would, if it's straight party line, he probably would just need the straight, Republican support.
Got it.
But as we know, the things in Congress are never that easy, never that straightforward here in Washington when we're talking about getting things through Congress. So I think for whoever the president picks, once we get to that point of the nomination process, Republicans and Democrats are going to be pressing that nominee to ask, where do their loyalties land? Is it to being fair around decisions on the Federal Reserve, Or is it instead the president who has said out loud that he wants his Fed chair to cut rates?
Right. And again, we're showing the 10-year 435 as we've just had auction top of the hour that went smoothly. And that's been, again, a source of angst, but one that the market is now coming to terms with in the wake of the bill and now this Fed race and all the rest of it. Brian, it's good to see you again. Thanks for joining us. Great piece.
Thank you.
Brian Schwartz.